Hello and welcome to At the Leadership Table with retired Major General Jim Hoyer. Oftentimes people hear the word leader and they think only of political leaders, but leaders come in many forms, and that's worth exploring. I'm Jim Hoyer, born and raised in West Virginia, a husband, a father, a new grandfather, and a retired military leader, serving for over 40 years in public leadership for our state and nation. Now, the most important mission I have going forward is to educate, motivate, and empower our next generation of leaders. At the leadership table with me today is Dave Lumsden, the chair of the board of directors for West Virginia Volunteer Organizations Active in Disaster, VOAD. Dave helps guide the statewide coalition of organizations, volunteer groups dedicated to both disaster preparedness, response, relief, and particularly recovery. West Virginia VOAD is a chapter of the national VOAD organization and brings together nonprofits, faith-based groups, and other partners who support communities surrounding disasters. And I have to say too that Dave is an accomplished military leader with 27 plus years, retiring as a colonel in the United States Marine Corps, and he's brought a lot of that talent, leadership, knowledge, and capability to his work. We first had the opportunity to work together when he was running relief support for Greater Greenbrier Valley during the 2016 flood. Some exceptional work done there. And Dave, thank you for your military service and your continued service to the state, particularly people who are in need in West Virginia. And I thank you for being at the leadership table today.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, not only to share space with you again, and thank you for your work, particularly when you were the AG. Really important and a really expansive view of what the Guard could do to help in a disaster. So it's a pleasure for me to be here, and I couldn't have said it any better. I'm glad you said it and I didn't have to.
Well, Dave, I'm going to ask you the same first question we ask all of our guests. Please share with us a standout moment when you learned something really important about leadership.
Well, having come through the Marine Corps, and after flight school, I was a helicopter pilot. Just being my first squadron and watching a commander who I stayed close with for decades, be able to look out across a hangar in a squadron getting ready to deploy and seeing the 100+ people that we had, mechanics working on different things, keeping those aircraft up. And he was calm. And that calm was something that found its way down into staff. So the staff was calm, and it found its way into the staff NCO and NCO ranks. And so people were able to go ahead and go about their work deliberately, as opposed to scurrying and panic and the rest. His name was Jim Shelton. He's passed away now, retired colonel, great guy, and I remember him to this day. But he's just one of a number of commanders or peers that I served with. And I guess what was common to all of the folks that I worked with, that I served under, is that ability to go ahead and take a longer view, to not have a zero defects mentality, to give people the space to be able to grow and learn. That was important. And I saw that. It wasn't immediate, it wasn't a flash, it wasn't an epiphany, but over a period of time, you start to see this over and over again with good commanders.
And I will have to say that during 2016, I saw you demonstrate that calm, steady leadership. Greenbrier Valley, then into the broader VOAD community, and what an impact that had on the people across those 12 counties that were really hurting and challenged by the devastation of that 1,000-year flood event, and greatly appreciate that. With that, can you share a little bit about your path and how you went from young Marine to aviator to colonel, then back into the work you're doing now, both with starting with Greenbrier Valley and then stepping into the role as chairman at VOAD?
Well, like a lot of youngsters, I joined the Marine Corps for the things I get to do. And I wanted to be a pilot in the worst way, and I was probably for a while one of the worst pilots you could have. But having said that, you go through flight school, you enter the fleet, stationed in Southern California or stationed in Okinawa or stationed at Camp Lejeune. I was given the opportunity to go to a number of schools, either pilot schools or professional military education. For the Marine Corps, that's very helpful if you're going to go ahead and stay in, and I was committed to staying in for a career. As you age out of a cockpit, in one of the latter tours that I had, I did 4 years of presidential helicopters. Marine One, Marine One, probably the best tour that I had. Really fascinating work and all over the world. But then you get a little longer in the tooth, and now the staff tours start to come. I ended up doing after war college, a 2-year assignment on the Joint Staff. Supposed to be 3 years. I got a 1-year cut for good behavior, and I went back down to the Marine Base at Quantico, where our officer schools are, and was faculty there, and then dean of academics at one college, and director of another college. And that pretty much finished up my active duty time. Mm-hmm. And then consulted and contracted with the Navy and Marine Corps and the Army on ship matters, particularly logistics kinds of ships. Did that for the better part of 15 years. Said in early 2016, it's time to hang that up. I've got a backlog of maintenance on our farm in Greenbrier County, and we'll start working that. That was January. 5 months later, we have the 2016 floods. And my accidental journey into the nonprofit world, into disaster recovery and relief, it started there.
So, and you're originally from?
California. Northern California.
So you came and made West Virginia your home by choice.
You have an amazing facility up at Camp Dawson. Mm-hmm. And our staff college would go for an end-of-year command post exercise up there. And every year I went back. It's like, hey, I really like this. And it reminds me of the mountains of Northern California where I was born and where we had family. And it's like, let's look into this. I found out the cost of living in West Virginia is much less than Northern Virginia or California. And so my wife and I made the decision to move to a rural lifestyle. What we thought was going to be a quiet lifestyle didn't exactly turn out that way.
Well, I'll have to say on behalf of me and my family and all West Virginians, we're glad you're here and glad you guys have made this your home by choice. So one of the things I want to point out to our listeners in part of Dave's comments that I think is really important, there are a lot of great talented people in the Marine Corps and the military and the aviation community, but not just anybody gets to serve on the presidential helo detail. So we're talking to someone today who was specifically picked and made themselves available because of the outstanding service and leadership to be on that detail. And I thank you for that as well. So VOAD is focused on guiding principles of cooperation, communication, coordination, and collaboration. How do these principles come into action in West Virginia in response to helping people who've been impacted by disasters?
You know, you could summarize those 4 C's, and National VOAD uses the same thing. VOAD is, at least in part, a dot connector. We're able to go ahead and bring the nonprofit community to a table to help with survivor needs. We're able to go ahead and coordinate with state, local, and federal agencies. And so being able to go ahead and have that conversation and to be able to work with partners to develop the best possible solution for families, that's a big part of it. we're also a provider. We can provide things like case management, which is a big issue for all of the counties that have suffered here in the last 2 years, actually. Case management, there are services that we can provide. But VOAD, and in this dot connector role, I'd be less than honest if I didn't tell you that the strength of VOAD isn't the staff or officers down in Bell. It's our partnerships and our members. It's what our members bring to it. It's how we coordinate with the state, how we coordinate with FEMA in particular. We're doing an enormous amount of that right now. That's where the strength comes in, being able to tie it all together or help tie it all together.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we did that made a big impact that you and I and others during 2016 is after that event, we pressed for VOAD to be that key link for West Virginia, for FEMA, and the volunteer organizations in the state of West Virginia. We did a lot of work together during 2016. One of the things I think that people don't fully understand, and I hope we can reinforce here today, is you have the response, and then you have the recovery, and in some cases, the recovery and that case management support you talked about may last for multiple years.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about that, and both from the 2016 perspective, but also give listeners now a little bit of understanding of, we just had some significant flooding in 2 different parts of the state, and how that's not over and that recovery is long term.
Well, in the southern coal fields, going back to February's disaster, that's really just beginning. You mentioned the rescue phase, whether it's swift water or whatever. The relief phase, where you're finding temporary housing, feeding, and the rest of that, help to shower trailers and water bowls and the like. But then you'll start to transition into the longer term, perhaps arguably the harder portion of that. And VOAD's role is to, we strongly support the rescue and relief operations. We provide supplies to all of the communities that need it. A lot of flood buckets, a lot of tools, a lot of this, a lot of that. So we provide supplies, but really going back to that dot connecting role, one of the most important things we do is we're the ones who convene the phone call, the Zoom, and we bring on the local emergency managers. We bring on state, we bring on whatever federal agencies, certainly all of our nonprofit partners. And we'll run through, in the early days, it'll be the emergency managers talking about what they need. And our partners and our members will go ahead and say, well, I can cover that. Or somebody can, I'll reach out and find somebody else that can do that. So that dot connecting role is really important. Right now, we're heavily involved with FEMA's voluntary liaisons, the VAL team they have here, and working with the southern coal fields to establish long-term recovery committees or groups, similar to what we did. 8 long-term recovery committees from the 2016 flood, from the 12 counties that were federally declared. We're working with counties right now in Mingo and McDowell County. They're moving forward with establishing those. So our role with FEMA is to support those local organizations to help them with that longer term recovery. On the shorter term, the rescue and relief, you know, the local emergency planning councils, they've got this down. They know what they're doing. The EMTs and the fire departments and the rest of that. The Guard knows what it's doing and what its role is. But when you start slipping into past what the first responders do, call us the second responders or the third responders, it gets harder and a little murkier.
So 2 things just to pull on the thread a little bit that I think after 2016, we made some significant change in focus and direction in the state, thanks to Governor Justice, others, the VOAD, state leadership. we focused on, in the recovery phase, we focused on two things, and you touched on one, and that is those long-term recovery committees. But they were focused, and we started to change the focus, not just recovering from the event, but also how do you take that recovery from the event, and particularly in southern part of our state where we've had some economic challenges and downturn, and turn that into a positive economic opportunity going forward. So maybe if you could talk about that a little bit, maybe an example or two, and then also how we focused on recovery with resiliency. So building above the floodplain when we rebuild back, or making things more flood proof going forward.
There's a term called blue skies, and we try and do things not only in the heat of a disaster, rescue and relief and recovery, but in blue sky periods where we're not having to convene those daily or weekly recovery Zoom meetings. What is it we can do to go ahead and improve our posture, improve the coordination between our partners and our members? We go ahead and convene at least once a year an annual conference. Our next one is the 9th and 10th of September. And I invite all of the folks that are interested in disaster recovery to go ahead and register and come on down to Charleston. It's a 2-day event. And so we'll talk to those things. But we're also engaged in a lot of studies. Dr. Jamie Shin, formerly from WVU, and now currently up at SUNY, but also the Tech Center here, Kurt Davis, the work that they're doing in developing the resiliency framework.
Right.
The tools that are available to floodplain managers and local leaders to be able to go ahead and understand their risk. And then we participate with National VOAD in the development of tools, policies, and procedures, things that didn't exist when you and I were working in 2016. Right. There's been an enormous amount of work done at the National VOAD level with recovery tools and policies and procedures, so that when we've got a group that wants to form a long-term recovery committee or group, they're not starting from scratch. We can go ahead and bring with them all of those suggested policies, procedures, and tools. So a lot of work in that area to get after the mitigation or the resiliency piece. I would say, and you may change the sequence of this, but I would say that we would benefit greatly if the legislature would fund a couple of trust funds that they've already put in position, but have not been able to go ahead and find the money to put in. One of those is a disaster recovery trust fund. The other is a resiliency trust fund.
Right.
There's an office, and I'm a real fan of the state resiliency office. The potential there is enormous, and the impact that they can have. So West Virginia VOAD works with not just, we don't do rescues, but we do help with relief. We certainly are involved with recovery. But then when you get to the resilience and mitigation and the preparation piece, we're also involved with that, either through events that we host or with events that we support.
Yeah, and you and I had the opportunity to see volunteer organizations, some veteran organizations, some faith-based organizations, rebuild bridges, individual bridges, in a way that they were basically flood resilient going forward with different types of piers and structures and things of that nature. We made sure that we, in some cases, new foundations had baffles in them, a lot of different things, but also working with conservation organization and the state conservation organization folks, just some simple things like cleaning out streams.
Yes.
And remediating that piece of it prevents flooding going forward and saves the state money. So to your point, hopefully we can reinforce to the state leaders that we need those funds in those trust funds to be able to create not just the recovery and taking care of people, but the resiliency to prevent these things going forward. And you and I were talking earlier, we've seen some great things from Greenbrier Valley. Two distinct school buildings. One turned into veteran and community housing. The other turned into a hotel, both that are creating economic opportunity out of a bad circumstance.
Right. You know, after a couple of years in as being chair of the Greater Greenbrier Long-Term Recovery Committee, and it was time for me to step back and turn those reins over to somebody else. My vice chair and I and the Economic Development Corporation in the area came to the conclusion that the back end of disaster recovery is community development. Mm-hmm. And it's not an either or, it's a sliding scale. You could be doing recovery works while you're also doing community development. And that led to our being able to go ahead and take what had formerly been the Rupert Elementary School campus, which at one point was a high school going back to the 40s, to be able to petition Greenbrier County Schools to give us that campus with our partners. And so the fire department adjacent to that campus got the acreage they needed for a medevac pad. Mm-hmm. We established a early childhood learning center with 3 of the buildings there. The gymnasium now is there for youth and senior recreation. And then the old 3-story school building is now the housing that you mentioned, 20 units of senior workforce and veterans housing. So again, you're not done. You need to be able to go ahead and look long. And I'm going to mention something at the moment too. McDowell County is one of the counties really working hard on establishing a long-term recovery committee. They don't call it a long-term recovery committee. It's Build Back Better McDowell County or something like that. Mm-hmm. So they're already looking long in what it is that they need to do.
Yeah, and I think you and I had a couple of meetings I remember with groups in the Greenbrier Valley, and there's a tendency, particularly when folks our age are trying to recover from an event, that we want to have things look like they did when we were growing up, right? We want to go back to that level of greatness we saw back in the day. But what I think we were able to do was to convince people that we're probably not going to go back. Let's take the good things from what we had back then, and let's envision ourselves going forward. And I think VOAD was a key player. Folks like you at those recovery committees, those leaders, were key in getting those communities to look forward.
Every community has different capacities, gifts. We were blessed in Greenbrier County with a lot of capacity, a lot of very talented people. We're not as reliant on extraction industries in Greenbrier County as some other counties are. So we're not as subject to market pressures, perhaps, as those counties are. But the ability to go ahead and find the leadership, and some of it's already there with your commissioners and your mayors and your town councils. But when you look at long-term recovery committees or groups, you really need to be able to go ahead and find those other folks, the old retired guys that just handed their business over to somebody. They know how to run things and bring things, people together. That community is really helpful if you can find it. And it's not just the old guys. You got to find the young folks. They're probably, they just have to have the passion. Yeah. And then you provide them the opportunity to excel.
And I think if people would go to and take the opportunity to go to White Sulphur Springs today, prior to the challenges it had faced economically prior to 2016, you guys in that area did a great job of what I would refer to as reimagining the past. So you took the great things from the past and you reimagined what it looked like in the future, and now you've got this just really great little place to go visit and experience.
It's a renaissance.
Yes.
In White Sulphur Springs.
Yeah.
And it goes to the human capital that they had available to them. And that was done largely locally with that leadership. So really, really good. Going back to, you talk about things as simple as cleaning streams out. Rainelle got badly damaged in the 2016 flood. But one of the outcomes there was streams did get cleaned out. And we've had some pretty significant storms come through in the last 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
And while there's been some minor flooding in Rainelle, that somebody found the funding to go ahead and clean those streams out has made a difference.
Yeah.
And I can come back to the funding discussion a lot. But.
Absolutely. So, because you come from the aviation side of things in the military, well, I'll ask it this way. Explain VOAD at the state level and then with the support of the national level for volunteer organizations, but also coordinating with other agencies is almost like the air traffic controller of recovery. So explain a little bit about that coordination and how that plays together.
Yeah, it depends on where we are in a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
So early in a disaster, State Emergency Management Division is clearly in the lead, and we go ahead and work as closely with them as we can. And then FEMA comes in as quickly as they can. Even without the declaration, the permanent footprint that FEMA has in West Virginia is out doing what they need to do, particularly on the assessment side, but then helping build long-term recovery committees as we move forward, and the distribution of funds and resources that FEMA can go ahead and do. When we look at long-term, now Commerce comes into it, and the work with US HUD to develop a community development block grant.
Right.
We had in the 2016 flood $150 million community development block grant, disaster recovery, to be able to go ahead and help with new home builds and the like on that. And with that program came a whole lot of case management. And case management, you can do it. Case management, if it's all volunteers, my experience is you're going to burn those folks out pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get the funding to go ahead and hire folks that do that as a living for a couple of years, you'll be able to go ahead and move through your backlog of cases. So we need case management, the funded case management for all of the 5 disasters in play since, and perhaps 6, with what's happened in Ohio and Marion counties. We need those hired case managers. We need that community development block grant. Not sure where we are with that right now.
Yeah, and as you and I again have experienced over the years, depending on where you are in the state, it's more than just housing with HUD. It's also, we may have to span a creek or a stream with a new bridge to get people to that housing because of the nature of our geography and our topography. So it's broader than just housing, right?
I had the opportunity to work with another block grant mitigation, CDBG-MIT, and that's all drainage and water, culverts and the rest of that. So the ability to go ahead and work with that, really helpful.
Hope people understand that military service is a team event. It's not just you, the individual. No. It's the spouse. It's the family members. Everybody's involved in that. Thank you and your wife for deciding to make West Virginia your home for the future, and also you have done tremendous work both with the Greenbrier Valley Committee, but also taken on the role of chair with VOAD. You are an exceptionally great patriot, and exceptionally great West Virginian and volunteer, taking care of people, and I thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Thank you to your viewership for letting us come, and letting us be a West Virginia. We probably are still wannabes, but we're working on it.
I think you're in. All right.
Thanks for listening. This has been At the Leadership Table with retired Major General Jim Hoyer. Did you know you can now find me on social media at RMG Hoyer? That's HOYER, or email me at rmgjameshoyer@gmail.com.